States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Scavacco, if you please read the governor's order.
In accordance with Section 2475 and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted via remote means and in person. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner. Tune into PAC TV government cable access channels Comcast 15 or Verizon 47 and watch the meeting as it is aired live. Or watch the meeting live on the PAC TV website, pactv.org. Members of the public who wish to participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner. In-person attendance, Plymouth Town Hall, 26 Court Street, and the Great Hall. Remote participation, go to the town website under the Select Board page and click on the Zoom webinar registration box.
Thank you. Call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome and congratulate John Mahoney to the board. Welcome, John. And welcome back, Charlie. Congratulations to both of you. And we're going to have the ceremony swearing in. When you're ready. Up there, yeah.
I can swear you in first. Sure. Okay.
The light on?
It's on. It's on.
There you go.
Okay. Charles H. Bletzer, you have been elected to the Select Board for a 3-year term ending May 17th, 2025. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform your duties as a member of the Select Board in accordance with the bylaws and charter of the Town of Plymouth and the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
I will.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Just want to say a couple of words. I want to thank my family. My wife Lisa is here, my daughter Isabella, and I want to thank them for their support, and my other two daughters, Jackie and Alex, through this campaign. I had a lot of good supporters, and a lot of my committee was a great committee that worked hard for me, and that's how I got elected. I'd also like to welcome John Mahoney back to the board, and I just want to say congratulations, John. And I know a couple of days ago we were opponents in a race, but now we're going to be colleagues, and I'm looking forward to working with you and the rest of the board and doing positive things for the town of Plymouth. So I thank you. And the last thing I want to do is, I had to mention Ed Bradley and Alan Costello. They ran a positive campaign, and I want to thank them for that, for their class. Thank you.
Ready? Right? Go big or go home?
Go big or go home, John.
Hello again.
Oh, hold on a second. Okay.
John T. Mahoney, Jr., you have been elected to the Select Board for a term, 3-year term ending May 17, 2025. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform your duties as a member of the Select Board in accordance with the bylaws and charter of the Town of Plymouth and the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
I do.
Thank you.
All
Congratulations.
right, thank you. Anna. Anna, thank you. Lives down the street from me. We're neighbors. So I just wanted to say a few words. It's borderline surreal to be back. Obviously, I've worked in the past before with Mr. Quintal and Ms. Cavaco, and I look forward to, dialing into some of the issues and, teaming up to get some of these challenges behind us that the community faces. Charlie, you were helicoptered in last August. I can't imagine. You dropped in the middle of nowhere 9 months ago, and, a lot of things were going on around you and certain issues, and I can't imagine how difficult it was to, go through what you did. With respect to the past campaign, I just wanted to thank Patrick Flaherty for his 3 years of service on the board, and, it's an honor for me to succeed him in this position. And then, again, just picking up on Charlie's comments before, Ed Bradley and Alan Costello ran a wonderful campaign. Really was a wonderful campaign. It was one of those elections where you could see in the last few years where, maybe you only got like 4,500 to 6,000 people voted, but there was a significant turnout. There was an uptick in turnout, and that was a positive thing to see. But it's an honor for me to be back. Thank you.
Okay, before we go into the reorganization, I just want to let the people know, and board members know, that I will not be accepting any nomination for chairman. It's been a wonderful year for me. It's been, I think you used the word challenging, very challenging. Regardless of opinion you may have, I think it's been a fantastic year. We've accomplished a lot. We've accomplished a lot right here in the building with the employees and management, from the top floor down to the basement. I've served as a board member in different sides of the aisles here, and I've never seen it this quiet. And I probably shouldn't say this, but it's really quiet. And when it's really quiet, it means people are happy, and so on and so forth. However, there are some controversial issues: the woodlot, the racino, as everybody's calling it now. But I've got to have that discussion when it hits the table, because it's not on the table. So I'm a little baffled by that. It has not been presented to the community at this point. It's been brought up, talk, but there's been no actual paperwork or application of any kind, which is why I personally did not want to put it on the ballot until November, when we had some information that we could share with the people in the community the proper way from Town Hall. That being said, it's been an honor. It's an honor to serve in any position on this board in this town that I love, and I think everybody loves it. You have to if you sit at this table. And it's a great honor, and I do love the town. So that being said, we have any nominations, and thank you very much.
I have a nomination. I want to nominate Betty Cavaco for chairman.
Do I have a second? I'll second it. Discussion? All those in favor? 3 in favor, 2 in opposition. Congratulations.
Thank you.
There you go. Do we have a nomination for vice chairman? John? Mr. Mahoney, excuse me.
I'll nominate Mr. Richard Quintal.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. So, Mrs. Cavaco, are you ready? Let her rip. We'll switch chairs next week.
You know what? You can stay there if you'd
Oh,
like.
no, that's okay.
I appreciate the support, and just to make a brief statement is that, we've been able to serve, we've all served together. Served with Charlie, welcoming him back, served with John for 3 years. We never had an issue before. I'm sure there won't be any issues now, but it's now time to get down to business. We have a lot of work to do for this community. So, and I'm hoping that we can do this all together. So, special town meeting article, Article 5. Derek?
I don't have anything new to report. As you know, this is a citizen's petition, and I don't see the petitioner here this evening. Is he here? Okay. He's going to get dialed in right now. Yeah, I guess I should lean into this. Yeah, so this is a citizen's petition. Chris is going to bring in the petitioner, Randy Parker, as we speak.
Hi, Randy.
Oh, my God, he's zooming in. I get it.
Hello, folks. I'm trying to figure out how to make you people look bigger. View. I don't know.
Gallery.
Oh, I saw full screen. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Oh, I look so much better. I'm happy now. All right, so, folks, you had asked to postpone this for a week, I presume. It was to get an opinion from town council or otherwise look into any legal or technical issues that might reside within the language of the Article 5 petition that simply says a permit and application shall not be required for residential lots or structures existing prior to March 27, 1973. And if I have a couple of minutes just to update and remind the board that this is essentially a grandfathering provision, much as we have with zoning, much as we have with health and septic systems and local upgrade approval and relief. When we go to do something on a lot that has a structure, it has equity, it has value, it has everything it needs, but to be fair, we really have no business applying successive or successor regulations to lots created back in 1973. And if the chair could tolerate 3 paragraphs for me, Ms. Cavaco? Sure. Patty?
Sure.
Elizabeth? Thank you. I'm going to read for a little bit, so bear with me. First off, this puts the protected nonconformity wetland status that we're looking for back to 1973 and concurrent with zoning. And I guess we can start out with local zoning regulations keep expanding. These little cottage lots along our 30 miles of coastline, 360 ponds, and numerous streams have become overwhelmed by buffers to any wetland. First, a 25-foot no-build buffer. Then, a few years later, a 35-foot no-touch buffer, and a 50-foot no-build buffer, and now just adopted, I think, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if I recollect incorrectly, April the 25th, and I thought we had till June before they were effective, but that's gonna require some more digging. And now what they've come out with on this last adoption is a 50 to 100 foot no build if no practicable alternative language with 96.5 square miles of land surface and 37.5 square miles of water. We contain 39% inland waters built upon early on. Many of these lots are smaller than the buffers require. Their entirety subject to any and all wetland regulation, to the point that owners of old lots can do very little without conservation approval. There are minor activities like fencing, but not even a post and rail fence down a lot line between properties can be installed in the present 35-foot no-touch buffer. Issue has been taken by the commission over the years, where wetland interests are storm damage prevention and sediment supply. That's for a coastal bank. That's for a bluff, like I live on. That's where the wetland interest of storm damage prevention and sediment supply apply. So we've had cases where there have been flagstones moved or proposed, grills of a stationary manner, brick patios that we could not pick up and rearrange, and the like, which simply cannot be subject to such autocratic de minimis control every triviality, as none has any influence over those two controlling interests that I mentioned. Simply put, disproportionate control is inequitably exerted over old lots than new. Just as is the case with zoning, what would any of you do on a protected non-conforming lot to have the town come along and say, hey, gee, that's a big road. We want you to be 100 feet back from now on. You can't do that. You can't build anything. So whether it's wetlands, health, zoning, the cost of regulation, de minimis, is out of control. Trying to deal with these trivialities, the hidden lost money, the contention and continuations, higher interest paid unnecessarily, obstructive litigation costs. And what I mean by that, Select Board, is it doesn't matter how trivial an issue we're dealing with the Conservation Commission. It could be somebody that wants to put a house on helical piles. And a structural engineer said, no, I'm not putting a house up 7 foot on pipes. But you have no choice. You got to go along because the option is to sue the commission for tens of thousands of dollars and waiting years to do what it is you want to do. If for no other reason, that has got to stop. To think that these people have us by the short hairs to the extent that they can argue over a deck, they can argue over tread. You can't do this here, you can't do that there. And I heard somebody say that I'm frustrated. That's an understatement. I don't anger easily. It's been like 10 years dealing with this, but I'm getting there. I am tired of this inequity of the town being in a position so superior to that of the general public that it just really rubs me the wrong way. So we've got the obstructive litigation costs, rent and value lost, waiting for something, inflation, higher stock costs, engineering bills that just go on and on through revision after revision, negotiations to avoid the jurist favored town, an avoidance of tens of thousands of dollars and years lost for nothing much. Our Conservation Commission has us at a distinct disadvantage for no wetland rationale whatsoever. I'd like to hear it, and I'm sure we would. We should not continue down this road. It is oppressive for no good reason. An excuse to perhaps control all development by controlling all land, even that occupied by those already here. Residents need exceptions for quality of life. Those of us that are already here, already living here, we want to enjoy the property, and we would like to do so without this type of constant interference, or on the part of many people, fear. What are they going to do to me? We need the exception for quality of life. We do not need, and I've backed these words out several times, guys, but they're here now, and I've looked them up. What we do not need is autocratic, tyrannical control of land we own and expect to enjoy. Leave the regulations to control vacant land and lots full tilt if you must, but please let us already here be. That's all I have to say. If you have nothing more, I'll take any questions and respond to comments if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Is there any questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Mahoney?
Thank you. Is it Madam Chairwoman? Is that how that goes?
Just,
Okay. Mr. Parker, good seeing you. It's been too long.
Hey, John, how are you?
Well, so,
Congratulations.
thank you. How did you arrive? I have some backup documentations here in my PDF, the packet, Randy. Can you just go into, how did you arrive at the grandfather date of March 27th of '73?
Hey, John, that's the most popular question. That is exactly the date printed on the on the front of my zoning bylaw. That is the date that we adopted modern zoning. That is the date that after its adoption, it was deemed effective by the Attorney General. So using that date, John, puts us in a pipeline with zoning. So once zoning looks at an application, we're all gonna know if that lot's, protected under zoning, and then it ought to be protected under our local wetlands bylaw also. So that's where that date comes from, John. I had heard it was difficult to interpret, date of adoption, effective date of adoption, when you relate it to the wetlands regulations. But now we're in the zoning pipeline. It's all secure. We know exactly what goes on with these properties and this lands. And I want to make sure everybody understands that every one of these lots is still subject to the very stringent and very good rules and regulations, 310 CMR 10, that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has. So there's no protection being lost. I don't know the last time you guys threw a beer can out the window, but we are some green people. We're not abusive. If people ought to be able, John, to ask themselves the question when they go to do something within 100 feet of a bluff or a pond or a stream or a swamp, they ought to be able to ask themselves with a little bit of common sense, am I doing any harm? And if your answer is no, I'm not, well, then do what you need to do. Stop stressing over it. But John, these are the frustrations I have after 10 plus years of opposing this sort of stuff. And I keep falling over. I think I'm going to make it this time because of the luxury of internet and information technology. Thanks, John. That answer your question?
It did. One more, Randy. So
Sure.
I want to go through an example. So in intense density between Bartlett Brook, Taylor Avenue, and the public access beach down on Whitehorse Beach. I'm assuming all those cottages down there were built before '73, for the most part, correct?
Yes, they were.
Okay, so in a scenario like that, are we opening up the possibility that you could promote greater development in a place where it shouldn't be? Are you giving away any protections? Because in a scenario like that, especially with, septic and cesspool down on the beach, the significant issues, so you're potentially making it worse?
That's a good question, John, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to rely again on the Wetlands Act and 310 CMR 10, the wetlands regulation promulgated by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to say that we are not opening ourselves up to something that might be happening had we not a local version of wetlands regulations on the books. Health, that's another jurisdiction. And they're the ones with control over what we can do and what we can't do. We can't exceed the number of bedrooms already there in most cases. The lots just aren't big enough to allow it. You can't ask to increase bedroom or flow if you need a local upgrade approval or any waiver whatsoever. So there is not, at least in my opinion, John, a potential for any significant additional development. That's how I'd respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
Hold on. Do you,
Thank you. Randy, a question for you. And maybe part of your answer can be explaining to people the Commonwealth wetlands protection aspects, since you mentioned them as being the what we would default to if this were to pass town meeting. What if I own a property from, from 1940, and it's on the ocean, and I want to expand the current structure towards the ocean? Can I, if this were to pass through town meeting, being exempt from our local protections and defaulting to the state level, the Commonwealth level, would I be able to do that? Would I be able to build up to the beach or the bluff? Would I be able to build within 50 feet of that or 35 feet? You mentioned in your answer to John septic and the possibility of greater density. And in your introduction, you mentioned grills and patios and fences. Let's talk about actual expansion of structures. Talk to me about that.
Well, we can talk about all that trivial stuff that I've already mentioned. The actual expansion of structures under the state regulations. As we had just the state regulations up until about 1990. And it's the last 20 or so years that these regulations have gotten considerably more restrictive as time has gone on. With the state regulations, Harry, the state regulations, you have the wetlands. In most cases where you're talking, and I think you're talking coastal wetlands,
Randy,
most of what occurs in those wetlands
Any wetlands.
is occurring in a resource area, coastal beach, coastal dune. If you're in a buffer to a resource area under the state regulations with conservation approval, you can build pretty close to that wetland, right up to it if you've got the appropriate mitigations. So far as the reasonable expansion of dwellings and such, if any proposal addresses the wetlands interest that 310 CMR 10, the state regulations, puts forward, if what is being proposed addresses the defined performance standards that are very much the same, in many cases identical to what we have locally, then you can do what you want to do if you're not doing any harm, Harry. That is what is really important here, that we are able to do things within conservation jurisdiction if we're not doing any harm. And we keep running into situations, and it's unfortunate to me, it's like this, where we're not doing any harm. But whether it's authority, whether it's the 25, 35, 50, 100-foot discretionary, for whatever other reason, to me, in answer to your question, Harry, there is no more risk permitting under the state wetlands regulations than there is permitting under the additional local regulations. If anything, it should save us all a lot of time and money not having to deal with it on lots that are too small to absorb it. Next question, please.
Yes, hi, I'm Virginia Davis, Precinct 4 Rep. And my question is, because I just looked tonight at the 91 pages of the rules and regulations for the Plymouth Wetlands Protection Bylaws, is why would town meeting be involved in voting on this? I was hoping somebody from the, the Conservation Commission would be here, because it's like, all right, what are we going to vote on? I just don't understand why either Article 4 and Article 5 are being presented to us. What do we vote on? Why would we be involved with this? Can somebody, it's really basic. No, I want the board to explain, someone to explain to me why these issues would come before us as town meeting members. Certainly, we wouldn't get in like, here's your issue, Randy, and here's the person, and here's the town meeting. We wouldn't be involved in voting on things like that. We are not experts on that. So that's all. I just am in a quandary about why either one of those articles would be up for town meeting to vote on. Thank you.
Mr. Brandisi?
Sure. So I think, as we all know, this is a proposal by Mr. Randy Parker to amend the town's bylaws. And so every amendment to the bylaw, creation of a new bylaw, requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting.
Did you understand that, Mrs. Davis? Did you hear what he said?
No, that's not a problem. I can repeat myself. So, as I just mentioned, this is a citizen's petition to amend the existing bylaw. And any bylaw amendment or bylaw creation requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting.
Sure. Could you please identify yourself for the record?
Good evening, and I would like to add my congratulations to the newly sworn-in board members, and I'm delighted to be here this evening. So I'm Evelyn Strawn. I'm here partly because I served on the Conservation Commission for 15 years. During those 15 years, I made bi-monthly site visits to the entire town, looking at the kinds of projects that fall under the Wetlands Protection Act. As a result of that, I gained a lot of information and appreciation for the town that we live in and some of the challenges that face us. And it prompted me to now be involved at a more, at a different level. I'm on the Sustainability Committee of the League of Women Voters, and I'm the coordinator of the network of Open Space Friends because of what I learned as a member of the Conservation Commission. So I would just like to remind you that the board has recognized the increased threats and the need to preserve and protect the resources that we have in Plymouth. It was almost exactly a year ago that the board issued an emergency declaration because of climate disruption. The board presented a budget that was approved by town meeting that includes a new position for a climate resiliency, a coordinator or planner, and the state has recognized the needs by awarding a contract on saltwater intrusion. So as a town, we're moving forward in protecting our resources. So I would just want to say that I do not think that this is a time to weaken these protections, and to remind you that what happens on one lot, whether the lot was created last month or 150 years ago, has an effect on neighboring lots and on the resources themselves. Across the Commonwealth, 1/3 of all wetlands have been filled in since we've begun building in this, in Massachusetts. I think it would be helpful to step back and look at why we have the wetlands protection regulations. The state, yes, there is a state law and regulations, but part of that is to create the local conservation commissions to administer that law and recognize that each town has their own unique issues and therefore should have their own bylaws and regulations. So that's what I think we're talking about with Article 5. So I would just ask you to keep the big picture in mind and to not support this article. Thank you.
Chris, could you, Mr. Howard?
Good evening, Select Board members. Bruce Howard, 735 Long Pond Road, currently sitting as Chair of Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission has grave concerns regarding Article 5, which proposes exemptions for residential lots and structures existing prior to March 27, 1973. This exemption would create two classes of properties for the application of the Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Homeowners may not understand or know that they must comply with the bylaw. Neighbors will see activities by others and assume that they can do the same. The Commission contends that this will result in more overhead in administration and enforcement, resulting in an increase in legal actions to be taken and defended in court. The Commission is further concerned that this exemption will weaken the implementation of the Wetlands Bylaw. Less regulation of properties at the coast will result in potential degradation of health and safety of homeowners who live there. The proposed exemption will challenge the town's ability to protect our wetlands, ponds, and streams. The health of these water bodies are windows to our sole source aquifer, and the exemptions proposed would have a cumulative negative effect. The Commission contends that this exemption is unnecessary. For the most part, the professional engineers who come before the Commission are able to work with their clients to do projects in an environmentally responsible way. Professional engineers work with their clients to help them understand what is permitted in the buffer zones and to evaluate practicable alternatives to locating activity within the outer buffer zone. And that's the area from 50 feet to 100 feet from the resource area. When there are no practicable alternatives, the Commission evaluates each project based on its merits and considers project waiver submissions. Rather than create exemptions from the Wetlands Bylaw, which will create inequity between properties, confusion among homeowners, challenges for engineers working with two sets of regulations, would allow less environmentally sound projects to move forward and negatively impact our environment and aquifer. The Commission asks for your support in maintaining the town's bylaw in support of the Wetlands Protection Act. Please vote no on Article 5. Thank you.
I'm waiting for you to say something. Anyone else like to speak? Mr. Parker?
Well, I would thank you, Ms. Cavaco, for an ability to, an opportunity to close a little bit. I don't know, first off, Evelyn Strawn, it's always nice to see Evelyn. She was, in my opinion, the best Plymouth Conservation Chair that we've ever had. And it was Evelyn that I trusted many years ago. She says, hey, we want to vote our own regulations. And I said, yeah, okay. And we want to adopt a wetlands bylaw and have no exemption for non-conforming lots. And I said, okay, we can go back to that. And, you know, I'm dealing with people here that are just superb Plymouth characters and personalities. And I do not like being on the other side of the fence from Evelyn or Bruce or any of these folks. However, we talk about environmental protection. If you were to look at the maps on my wall, aquifer protection, groundwater, zones 1, zone 2, zone 3, recreational water bodies, there is very little of Plymouth that is not protected by aquifer protection, by the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, by the state wetland regulations. We are more than sufficiently protected in the town of Plymouth environmentally. When it comes to wetlands, there was language in a previous version that spoke to why we needed a 25-foot buffer. And it read ridiculously to me, and it's all gone now. So to me, really, guys, I think, and this isn't a comfortable thing for me to say, I think that the wetlands regulations that we're dealing with locally, understanding, of course, that we're looking to amend the bylaw in order to change the rules that conservation relies upon to change the rules. The waivers that they're talking about from 50 to 100 feet, that's discretionary. So they're saying to people within 100 foot of any wetland, doesn't matter if it's a dune, if it's a beach, if it's a bluff, if it's a swamp, if it's a river. We have to have some latitude to go on with living our lives and doing what residents do without the overbearing, in my opinion, regulations that we're looking at coming out of the Conservation Commission. So that's where I'm coming from. Am I frustrated? Yes. Am I angry? A little, and I'll try not to be going forward. It's a civil process, but I would encourage you to recognize the rights of everybody, not just White Horse Beach, which does come across as intensely and densely occupied and used. Those people, I was down there last weekend. Isn't it interesting? And I also have seen a bunch of continuations coming back to the commission with changes from composting toilets to the conventional hydraulic application, which surprised me a little bit. All those people on White Horse Beach, they're afraid they're all going to end up with composting toilets. They don't want that, and there's no need for it. That's controlled by the health department, but not by the Conservation Commission. They also had a comment that not only aren't we doing composting toilets everywhere on White Horse Beach, south of the brook, it's ridiculous. Not only aren't they doing that, we're the town to continue, in the eyes of those living on White Horse Beach, to persecute them for being where they are. Get rid of White Horse Beach. Those people are a bonus. They have no services, and the comment was to me, yeah, you take away White Horse Beach, the town of Plymouth is going to go bankrupt. I don't believe that, but that's what their thinking is. And whether you're dealing with the state wetlands regulations or you're dealing with the town's regulations, they're very much one and the same. The state isn't going to let us do anything on dunes and beaches that the town won't let us do, or vice versa. So I can't encourage the Board of Selectmen enough to recommend this, and let's get at the town meeting and have a discussion involving the entire community about these two issues, Article 4 and Article 5. Thank you so much for all the time, Ms. Cavaco.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Any more comments from the board? Or, oh. Please identify yourself for the record.
Steve Lyden. I have no idea about the regulations. The only water I live in is next to my pool. But I would like to know, have these regulations been compared to other towns? I don't know how many towns, but if you go up the coast, you got Hingham, Weymouth, Situate. All these, they must have some kind of regulations. How do ours compare with those? Has some kind of research been done to see how our conservation committee meets with, meets the same regulations in other towns? And maybe we can find a happy medium. I don't know. But I just think that we should be able to look at other towns and see what they're doing. Thank you.
Mr. Brandisi, or do you know any of that, or Mr. Parker?
Yeah, I wouldn't, go ahead, Randy.
Thank you, Derek. To the best of my knowledge, the last time I checked, about half of the municipalities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts even had, a local bylaw. And Stephen, I'd have to tell you very candidly that the first I ever heard of a buffer was the 25-foot buffer, and I learned that Hingham had one of 50 feet. Now, so do we. So I don't think that is so uncommon. The 50 to the 100 foot, no practicable alternative. I don't know if that's original thought by our Conservation Commission and administrator, or if that has been lifted from some other set of rules and regulations. So I have a feel for how we compare. And I've also heard that people are watching us, other municipalities are watching to see if our Conservation Commission in our town meeting sustains this 50 to 100 foot discretionary buffer, because they're going to do it too. So Stephen, I wouldn't be relying upon what other towns do to judge what we ought to be doing. Plymouth is special, and we should be protecting it, and we do.
Mr. Howard?
Thank you. My wife works as a landscape designer up and down the South Shore coast. And in her experience, some towns are more strict than the current rules and regs for Plymouth, and some are less. So I think there's a lot of variability from town to town. But I would say that we're probably right in the middle in terms of the degree to which we enforce our standards.
If I may, I'd sure like to know how many towns have 50 to 100 foot discretionary, Brucey. But that's going to work itself out. We have until June 21st. Thank you all.
Back to the board.
I'm going to vote no on Article 5. Last week I voted yes on Article 4 to give town meeting, an elected body, the ability to take a look at the rules and regulations passed by the Conservation Commission, which is an appointed body, in order that they would, the voters, the residents, through their town meeting representatives would be able to, have a say in these very important rules and regulations. But I can't support this for many of the reasons that Mr. Howard pointed out. I'm also concerned about, I understand why it's 1993 or 1973 for the existing structures or properties rather, but I see nothing in this that does not allow somebody who purchases a property that dates from, that was created prior to 1993 to not also inherit the exemption from current bylaws. And I think that that's problematic.
Anyone else? Mr. Mahoney?
Through the chair to, the town manager, maybe the chair herself, somebody could just, at, your earliest convenience, send me a copy of Article 4.
Sure. Happy to do that.
It's the board's pleasure.
Do we have to take a position on this? Or can we just send it and let the legislative body decide this in the special election?
We can vote to move it forward. Yes? Support it?
Take no motion, even if you take no motion, no action, it still goes to the citizens.
Right, it's a citizen's petition.
That's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Because I see merits on both sides, but I'm just one vote, and I'd rather leave it up to our legislative body and let them make that decision.
Okay.
I just have a comment. Did I understand it that we were gonna see these regulations before they were voted on by, after a third party looked at them? Because I don't recall seeing any of them.
Correct. We were supposed to, there was a third party that was supposed to be hired. They were going to come back to us before they voted in any of these regulations, and that did not happen. So I actually support this article for some of the reasons that Mr. Bletzer said, for our legislative body to be able to discuss it. And I realize that both sides do have merits, but it gets very difficult when you're on your own piece of property and you're not building on a wetlands, but you're putting up a post, a post and beam fence or something like that, something small, that Mr. Parker is quite correct, because I've heard from quite a bit from residents that are, on the beach and everything, and it's tens of thousands of dollars to fight a position like that when it's just a little, 2-foot fence. So I actually support this article to move forward for town meeting, but like I said, it's the pleasure of the board.
I will motion this article for discussion and vote.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All those in favor? Okay. No action.
If I could, Madam Chair, if I could just interject, just so we're clear, all citizens petitions, regardless of the vote or action or inaction taken by the board, will go to the town meeting.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Parker and Mr. Howard.
A procedural question, Betty. No one voted yes for it, but no one was given a chance to vote no?
Okay.
So are we just assuming that because no one voted yes, we all voted no? Or?
Well, it's really, there was a motion but no action. So it still moves in the same, it still moves through the same system. It's going to go to town meeting, unless you want to.
Well, I just think the reason that I motioned it was so that there would be a record of how the members of the Board of Selectmen felt, the Select Board felt about this particular article, because I would like to be on record as voting no.
Okay. Mr. Mahoney?
Yeah, Ms. Cavaco, just if you wanted to send this with no motion, no action, I think the original motion and the second would have to be withdrawn.
Do you want to withdraw your motion?
Or you could second, try to second.
And I'll withdraw my second.
So you're asking me to withdraw the motion for discussion and a vote? And we would then just have no motion, no action?
Correct.
Correct.
Betty, even if you withdraw your second, then there's no second, then that doesn't lead to the.
I'll withdraw my
Yeah,
second.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it, thank you.
You guys can say it.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Thank you all so much for all the time. I appreciate it.
thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. I still would like to know what the outcome was at the third party and what the differences were,
Right.
you know.
Mr.
what-
Brandisi, can you get that report for us?
You are referring to the Conservation Commission's most recent report?
Yes. Well, it was, like I said, there was a third party.
Right.
They were supposed to come back to us before they put any policies in place. Our understanding that policies were put in place without them coming back to us.
I will follow up.
Thank you.
Was Mr. Howard still here? Because wouldn't he would know that, wouldn't he? If he's still up there.
I'm still here.
The third-party report. Do you have that?
The third-party report was received. The commission went through the individual line items on that report and adopted many of them, not all, but many of those recommendations from the third-party reviews. And remember, we did 2 third-party reviews. We first reviewed it with town council. Those recommendations were assessed and many were adopted. It was then as part of a public hearing. And then when the select board requested that we go outside for a third-party review, we took those recommendations from the third party. We assessed them individually, voted on them, and many were adopted and included in the rules and regs that have since been formally voted on and adopted in an advertised and public hearing.
So, if I remember right, you came before us, we had a citizen stand up, and he found 47 different mistakes, and some of them he didn't think were legal with some of your new rules and regulations. And at that time, we asked you for a third-party report, and to this day, we've never seen the report. So the select board has never seen the report.
And I
We can
believe,
make that report available to you as well as our assessment of those findings. Are you now going to, never mind. So I will work to make that information available to the select board.
Well, the way I understood it was you were going to get us the report, and we were going to be able to look at it before you voted
Correct.
on the new
That is
rules and
not my
regulations.
recollection, sir.
Well, we can probably look into that, but that's how I recollect it, so.
Chris, would you mind getting the minutes to that meeting? Thank you. Anybody else? Any other board members? Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item is the town manager's report.
All right, great. So just a couple updates. I think everybody has noticed that on the website, the town clerk has posted the election results, but I just want folks to keep in mind that that's not the official vote tally. So they're still working through counting some hand-counted votes, so we would expect that the official certified election results will be posted next week. But keep in mind, I talked to Larry Pizer, our advisor to the town clerk's office, and he said what's posted are the winners and losers. So the winners are not going to change. The official tally is what they're working through right now. So just keep in mind, be patient, and we'll get the official results out next week. Moving on, yesterday I had the opportunity to meet with Ben Thomas from Senator Markey's office. I had requested to meet with Senator Markey's office to discuss a previous conversation that was held with DPH and DEP officials about the water and the spent fuel pool. And the request I had 4 or 5 weeks ago to state officials was that, I really believe that we have local experts that work for the town that can, that should be a part of that conversation when they start sampling that water for pollutants and other materials. So I've asked for Senator Markey's assistance in getting us a seat at the table when Holtec starts to sample the water in the spent fuel pool. During the conversation, I learned that they will be identifying sampling points throughout the harbor. So I've also asked for our harbor master and David Gould to be a part of the identification of those sampling points. I got a commitment from Senator Markey's office that they'll engage with state officials and with Holtec officials to get us a seat at the table. So I'll keep the board posted on how we move forward with that process. I want to bring something else. I talked about graffiti over a month ago, but we continue to get more and more notifications each and every day of graffiti found on public and private property. I met with staff today to try to, think about some processes we can put in place. So the first item is, we really expect the public and any other individual who notices graffiti to contact the police business line. And the reason why we want to contact that business line is because it gives us the opportunity to track the numbers and types of calls and then dispatch the appropriate response agency. So that could be the DPW on public property. We know that we have a private firm that'll help us remove graffiti on private property. So once we get a better sense of the depth of the problem, we're also looking at best practices that we could potentially go to town meeting in the fall to maybe implement bylaws to prevent the misuse of spray paint. So again, I've identified it as, I think, a growing concern here in the community, especially as tourism season is in front of us. As far as some updates, I mentioned a few weeks ago that we'd be opening the bids for the new the portable restrooms at White Horse Beach. We're on track to have those restrooms delivered and operational by July 4th. The crossover will be open for the first time this Saturday at 9 a.m. That'll begin, again, at 9 a.m. and be 7 days a week through Labor Day. Keep in mind that effective this weekend, only Morton Park and Plymouth Beach will be staffed. So I just want folks, again, we keep talking about that every week, but I want folks to be aware of that as we head into the warmer months. The bulkhead project next to Wood Seafood is still on track and expected to be completed by June 15th. And then unfortunately, the smokestack at Cottage, the demolition is now complete. That demolition was completed today. We're now working with folks on the board and the management over at Cottage to transport those bricks over to the water barn for future use. And then we talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about the pavement management program. So that's starting this week. The chip sealing and pavement management program is beginning. Per the request of the board, we actually posted on the, if you go to the town's homepage under quick links, you can go directly there. You'll see pavement management, where folks from the public can go there. They'll see if their roads are going to be paved, and if their roads has been identified, it'll tell them when they will be paved. And then last, I just want to congratulate Caitlin Burchell. She is now the town's first female motorcycle officer. So again, she went to a week-long training to be that a motorcycle officer. So congratulations to Officer Burchell for this great achievement. Pending any questions, that's all I have for this evening.
Great. Mr. Quintal?
Derek, going back to the election, I know we had some new precincts, and my question is, do you know if we have enough town meeting members for a quorum? I know in some places, like, somebody asked me today that they were voting and it asked for 9, and there was only, I think, 6 names. So in a case like that, I mean, if it's only one say precinct, well, what if it happens in 5 or 6? I mean, is there a magic number? If there isn't enough, does the moderator appoint? I'm just curious if you could, if you don't know the answer, that's fine, because I don't either. I'd like to know, first off, where we stand, and second off, what happens if it falls below the required number.
Right. So I'm looking as you speak.
Okay.
I'm looking at the posted spreadsheet by the town clerk's office, and there appears that there are a number of vacancies in some of the precincts. Precinct 7, looks like there's 2 vacancies right now. I'll have to follow up with the moderator as to what the next course of action will be to fill those vacancies.
Oh, okay. Pat? Could you please identify yourself for the record?
Pat McCarthy, Precinct 18, formerly 5. The process by which, if there is a vacancy prior to town meeting, it's up to the precinct to caucus in a replacement. There are a number of write-ins. There were 34 vacancies going into the election. So there were 34 possibilities of write-ins, but that process is tedious. And so even if it's a week before the election, before the special town meeting, the precinct has to caucus and appoint someone. And you have to reach out and let people know through the media that there is an opening in your precinct. And I've had to do that as chairman in Precinct 5 prior.
Mr. Hartman? Someone's chasing you. Thank you, Mrs. McCarthy. John?
Question.
Sure.
Derek, so the pavement management program, so I know in 17, Mr. Beater got $5 million in the program that Ms. Barrett had set up. That was for 2 years, and then I know in 19, he got another $5 million at town meeting, and I know the intent was to go back in 21 for more, but that was canceled because of the pandemic. So is this another allocation, or are you referring to something different when? So
Well,
I
I
guess
can't.
where are these funds coming from, and what, is this the program that,
This is the same program that you're referring to. I believe this year, so it's every 2 years, the way they described it, and so this is the first year of the 2-year cycle.
Okay.
And I believe it's $2.5 million, $2.2 million worth of pavement we're going to complete this year.
okay, so he got a third allocation since the program began of $5 million. 2.5 this year, 2.5 next year. I'm
Correct.
assuming. I'll follow up with the DPW director.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody, any other questions for Derek? Derek, I have a couple, well, not questions, but comments. When you spoke of graffiti, I know that someone sent a message today that there is graffiti in the cemetery, there is graffiti on our jetty, and obviously, they just took care of the graffiti on those little fishing shanties across from Burt's. Now, is that the town's, or does that belong to someone else?
Which one behind?
The
Across
shanties.
the street? I
Yeah.
believe actually, those shanties came up today, and I was under the impression that those are owned by the town.
So why can't we fix them? Or can we fix them?
Again, that came up today, and there were different opinions of what the final disposition should be for those. I do believe, and I don't see him here today, Mr. Cohen had talked to town officials in the past about putting money towards rehabilitating those buildings.
I mean, if it's a money thing, I'm sure we could, put something out there under the custody of maybe the DPW or our facilities department. You could probably get some volunteers. One of them is definitely falling apart. I think they may need, the other one has windows boarded up and things like that. But I think to be able to kind of get back the quaintness of those, I mean, I think, I would certainly be in support of putting some money into those. Everett.
Everett Malaguti, currently Precinct 2. I believe that the answer for this would probably be more in Bill Cohane's field house, because I believe there was a action through CPC that they were going to spend money of their own pots to actually refurbish and rehabilitate these structures. I know that one of the 3 has been burned down within the past couple years. but the other two are in very decrepit condition, and they do need to be a more welcoming site, especially to one of our popular entrances into the town. So I think that if the board would confer with CPC and Bill Cohen, I think that would be the first step of action before anything else. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Evan, I have a question for you. Are these, is it historic value, or what would the purpose of those buildings be?
I believe it would be historic value more. It does represent the fishing and nautical history of the town of Plymouth. And there was, if I can recall from a few years ago, before there was action from CPC for the rehabilitation of these, that there was talk, it wasn't finalized through any votive action from them, that it could be used as rentals for artist cottages or stuff like that, similar to what is done, I believe, in Hyannis or another town along the Cape that has these sort of structures that artists can use during the summer for their activities and wares and sale. But I don't know the full plan for the CPC, but it is a historic part for our nautical past.
Derek, could you reach out to Mr. Cohan?
Yeah, I'm
About
happy to have
that?
that conversation to see.
And while we're in that area, can we get some kind of an update on Burt's and find out what's going on there? You know, we hear that they're going to rebuild it. We've been hearing it for years and years and years, and it's just outrageous to even look at anymore. Anyone else for Mr. Brandisi? Nope. Okay. Public comment. Is there anyone that, Mr. Cirque, please identify yourself for the record.
Rich Cirque, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. I've previously spoken about why I believe it would be unwise to locate a racetrack on the county-owned woodlot. I'm here tonight to say that it would in fact be illegal to locate a racetrack on the county-owned woodlot. On Sunday night, I was made aware that Massachusetts state law currently actually prohibits a racetrack from being located on premises owned by the Commonwealth or one of its political subdivisions. And I would refer those who are interested to Chapter 128A, Section 3L. I'm astounded that this prohibition was not discovered by counsel for Boston South, by counsel for the county commissioners, or by town council, assuming that is that Boston South, the county commissioners, and the select board had sought the opinion of their respective attorneys at the outset, as we repeatedly urged. I note tonight that according to Mr. Parker, town council's opinion was sought regarding Article 5 of the special town meeting warrant regarding the applicability of wetlands regulations to grandfathered lots. But why wasn't town council's opinion sought regarding the proposed racetrack, especially given the fact that we urged the select board to ask for town council's opinion? In any event, for this reason alone, I respectfully urge you to rescind your March 29 vote in support of Boston South's due diligence regarding this land. And the way to do it, I would suggest, is to put it on the agenda for a forthcoming meeting of the Select Board when you can revisit this whole issue, instead of giving support for further due diligence in pursuit of an illegal use. Thanks.
Derek?
Yeah, I'm happy to help clarify. And I think, Mr. Cirque, you're correct. The law, as you describe it, is true and accurate. However, this property would be allowed to be used as a horse racing facility, if it was disposed to a private property owner.
If it were conveyed to a private property owner,
That's right.
then it would no longer be county-owned land. But my understanding throughout is that the county proposes to lease the land for a racetrack. That's the representation that's been made all along. And in that event, it's county-owned land, and a racetrack can't be located on county-owned land. That's my understanding.
So again, you raised some valid points, but just, you mentioned county-owned land a number of times.
Yeah.
And this is not the county commissioners in this room. So what the county decides to do with that property, I think it still remains to be seen, because you asserted that the town hasn't done their homework on that. And I think part of the reason we haven't spent money on town council is because it's not the town's project, it's the county's project. So in this case, if the county decides to dispose of it to a private property owner, then it certainly would be able to be a horse racing facility. Whether or not they decide to lease it, again, that's entirely up to them, and they'll make that decision at the county level.
My only point is that if it's a lease, and if the ownership remains in the county, then according to current state law, a racetrack cannot be located on it. End of story. RIP.
Hi. Can you identify yourself for the record?
Hello, I'm Elise Bruno, Precinct 18 rep. I'm also here to talk about the woodlot. I understand that question 4 on the ballot this past weekend was non-binding. However, since some of the select board used this issue in their campaign and others have stood out with voters against the idea of a horse track in Plymouth, and the voting results provided an almost 90% no vote to this, I would like to request that the issue of the woodlot being developed by Boston South be put on a future agenda. It has been insinuated by Boston South that the present zoning of the woodlot allows for horse racing, even though this is not true. It's zoned for light industrial and rural residential. The Select Board has provided Boston South with the conditional letter of approval to pursue a horse track, along with a full range of other alternative uses. Since the approval letter was written, it has become clear that Boston South's first and only priority is thoroughbred horse racing and gambling. As much gambling as allowed by the law. I would like to request that since it seems that the Select Board is unanimously opposed to the idea of a horse track, that the Plymouth Board of Select Persons immediately declare their oppositions to Boston South's lease and/or acquisition of the woodlot, or any other property in Plymouth, and further declare their opposition to commercial horse tracks, casinos, or any other similar venture in Plymouth, as the voters do not want this kind of cultural shift to take place in America's hometown. With that said, I find that the only way to fully trust the word of the Select Board would be to resign the letter of approval, as actions speak louder than words, and it would be most transparent to do so publicly. I think that the issue brings up a perfect opportunity to pursue other economic initiatives. I think that this woodlot parcel is a prime location to set up an ecotourism route. If we were to add a more extensive trail system to what's already there, we could boost it from Miles Standish right through the Eel River Preserve into the Russell Mill Conservation Area, out through the woodlot, and ultimately lead to Long Beach. If we put in some money into there, you could have people come here to ride horses, you could get mountain biking going on in there, you could get a bunch of other ecotourist activities, maybe even campsites set up there, something that promotes the natural history of this town, instead of something that's going to bring in, what we know what gambling and all that's going to bring in, and our infrastructure is going to go down, but there are other more sustainable long-term initiatives that I think we can pursue that better suit the end value of this woodlot than going for a large development project that 90% of the voters don't even want. A lot of them, it seems, would prefer preservation. So I just think that's something we should think of. And it's an economic opportunity that I think we shouldn't let slip out of our grasps. Thank you.
Thank you. And we don't normally respond to public comment, but there are a couple things that I'd like to say. First of all, we did not approve horse racing. We approved the process to go forward for the best use of that land. Second of all, is that with the vote that was taken on Saturday, and 88% of our residents was a resounding no, that was the plan to have it on an agenda item. I've already spoken with the town manager. I have sent him the records request that was received by some residents with Boston South, and it does look like they just want to proceed with what they want. So I suggest that we put this on the agenda, that the request for information that we received regarding Boston South and the Gaming Commission and everything else, that be addressed through our legal counsel, and we can make June 7th an agenda item to discuss this in more detail, because I agree that that was not the purpose of that original letter. It was to approve a process. It was to approve nothing else but a process, not a horse track, not nothing. It was just the process to see what the best use of that property was. They haven't even signed the lease yet, so I think June 7th would be a good date. We are not meeting next week. It's Memorial Day weekend, and I figured after a long election cycle and back-to-back meetings for quite some time, that the board could probably use the night off. So we will please make that an agenda item, and hopefully, and if we need an attorney here, please have KP Law join us, or if we need a special counsel, we can do that as well.
And I'd like to just add to that, it's the county RFP, they received it. They came, did a little small presentation before us that they want to invest money in Plymouth. We voted to let them do their due diligence. It's not costing the town of Plymouth a penny for them, for them to do this. They're spending their own money. And I can tell you right now, I am not in favor of any proposal at Exit 5. I don't care what it is, until the infrastructure is fixed there, until that exit is fixed. So no matter what came before me, and no proposal has come before us yet. We're probably 2 or 3 years away from any proposal coming before us. And I can tell you, we'll be against gaming, we're going to be against the horse racing, but I'm going to be against any proposal if they don't fix the infrastructure there, because it's too congested at Exit 5. The people live there, and I did 2 standouts there, 2 Saturdays in a row, from 10 to 12 by Home Depot. It was horrific what I saw there. So that's how I stand on it. And yeah, it was out on my mailings, and it wasn't a political thing to try and get me elected. It's how I feel. Okay, thank you.
Harry?
Through the chair, I would like to request that Mr. Brindisi, please, to be safe, announce that agenda item as a public hearing and also appropriately advertise it. Unless you have already spoken with our town council and they do not believe that that's the case.
I've sent a communication to council regarding that very question about whether or not it has to be a public hearing or a public meeting. Certainly, if the statute requires a public hearing, we'd post it appropriately, but I'll keep you abreast as to their response.
Okay, just keep in mind that it has to be announced and advertised seven full days in advance. We're talking about 13 now.
Right.
So just time is of the essence. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Dicky?
With all due respect, I think June 7th is like way too early. But, I mean, what do we ask council? Council, might we have horse racing on the county lot? Might we have this on there? What if they don't do that? What if they don't even sign the lease? So, there's a process to this, and it starts with the county and them. We can have all the public meetings we want to have, and we will. And it's not going to make a difference until we know what's actually going there. I know there's emails. It's probably 185 pages worth I printed out. I've seen them, I've heard of them before. The big breaking news this week. I haven't read them all, but I mean, how do you have a meeting a week from now or 2 weeks from now when you don't even have a proposal? What do you ask town council? I mean, seriously.
Well, I think unfortunately, some of the body of those emails are from Boston South saying that they do have the approval of the town and the county.
Okay.
So I think that's what we need to address, because in fact, is absolutely not true.
That I can understand. I haven't, like I said, it's been a busy week.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I would also like to point out that in the body of those emails is a proposed timeline that Boston South has created, and they've been pretty good about sticking with it so far, and they plan to put their license application into the State Gaming Commission on June the 1st.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think what we have to do is maybe change the wording in that letter and craft something we're very specific with the gaming committee, that we oppose gaming and gambling.
Well,
we can
added, not changed.
Right, it would
That's
be-
what I look into,
Yeah.
change the wording. Yeah, adding, yes.
Well, the
Okay.
unfortunate part about it is that our letter that Chairman Quintel signed did not approve any process, anything
Nothing
that
about
has horse racing or anything like that. Now, whether they've changed their position and believe that we have is different, but we need to set that record straight, because especially after the vote, I think it's safe to say that there is no one on this board that is going to move forward with a horse track on the woodlot. No one.
And if Mr. Cirque is correct, and I believe that he is, then we have nothing to worry about, because they're just wasting their money, if that's true. But like I said, no proposals come before us. And when it does, if it's something that the residents don't support, we'll never be for it. But I'm not for anything until the infrastructure is fixed. I'll say that one more time, too. Thank you.
Mr. Quinn.
I mean, the wording in what we originally voted on, I think, is fine. However, I think we could craft another letter, leaving that the same and adding in, after our election, and these are the results, no way do we support horse racing. That I can see, but the original language
Correct.
did not address it.
Right.
In any way or the form, regardless of what you might see on Facebook.
Correct.
Okay.
So June 7th as an
Yeah.
agenda item, and for the,
Maybe draft a letter, have a letter drafted.
Yep.
Prior to, so
Right.
we can have council look at it before. Have Derek do that.
okay, go ahead.
Pat McCarthy, Precinct 18, and if you're going to do that on June 7th, I think you should notify every single town meeting member, because caucuses will be happening that week and the next week. So, and I think a lot of us are concerned about this issue. So backing up from that, I attended the first meeting at the commissioner's office when the commissioner's meeting that we weren't allowed to speak at. I also, we gave testimony to the county commissioners on May 9th. Many of us are here in this room. They videotaped it. They said they are putting it on their website on a YouTube video of it. I don't think it's been posted yet. However, many of the issues that we brought up that night at the meeting, and they were very respectful, courteous, and absorbed the issues and questions and concerns that we had, the county commissioners and the administrator. And I think they were surprised at about a lot of our questions and concerns. And it was directly asked to them at night that, I can't quote it exactly, so if you watch the video, you will get the exact quote from the person, that if in fact you have enough concerns, could you not sign the lease agreement with Boston South Development? And they said yes. They are due to sign it, I think it's June 29th.
June 23rd.
23rd. So time is of the essence to make a stand. And Steve Bulletin's going to speak to one of the issues I was going to speak on. However, backing up from that, many of us got a chance to participate in their pretend presentation meeting at Memorial Hall, of which their favorite answer to us was, "I don't know." They hadn't even looked at the lot yet. And the guy from Vince or whatever his name was, from Kentucky, all he spoke about was developing the racetrack. The issue of traffic came up. I brought up the issue since I've been here a long time, and Hollywood East was going to save us all with the exit ramp coming in off of Route 25, and that mass development was going to pay for that. So I asked Loring Tripp, who didn't really participate, he sat there but didn't really participate much, that I said, when Hollywood East, we were counting on that to solve the traffic problem. I don't understand with the Cloverleaf, two-story Cloverleaf proposal that we've read about, how you think that's going to be funded or taken care of, and where are you going to Cloverleaf it around the prison? I mean, the county land's the county land, but where the heck is it going to come in? I mean, really. I mean, the more questions we asked, the more answers they didn't have. So I don't really think, I think time is really of the essence to have that letter written, rescinding. I don't care what your first letter said, they're interpreting it the way they want to interpret it. Let's see, what else did I have to say? And in terms of the vote on Saturday, the records were about, I think it was 881 no. I mean, 6486 no and 881 yes. And I think some people actually went in to vote and only voted on the question, because when you tally up and you look at all the voters, that was their specific reason for going to vote, and some of them were all brand-new voters. And statistically, it looked like about 14.5% of the population voted on that question, of the voters voted on that particular question. The other question that was brought up when they keep telling us about all the commercial taxes that we're going to get, how's that going to happen? Well, the gentleman from Kentucky explained about employee taxes. Well, we don't have that in Massachusetts. Also, and questions were asked about the Granite Links awesome project they have up there. And there are seasonal employees up there. What happens to the seasonal employees down here? I think, is that where the gaming part's going to come in, and we're going to have a Racino? And I hate to bring the other issue.
I think we should save all this for the 7th when we have a specific.
I hope that's not too late.
Okay.
That's I think that under new business, maybe you could discuss doing a rescinding of a letter sooner. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Select Board. I'm Steve Bulletin. Steve Bulletin, Planning Board member. I'm not an expert in Massachusetts gaming law, but I am an attorney and I have reviewed the statutes. They are clear as mud. And that's something that I think Boston South is counting on. Mr. Cirque is correct in his reading of Chapter 128A, 13 sub L. That particular provision is scheduled to be rescinded July 31st, 2022. That's because it is going to be put into a new regulation, but we have no idea what that new regulation is going to say. Looking at the documents that have been obtained through the FOIA request, three things really jump out at everybody. One, there is a very close relationship between Boston South and the Mass Gaming Commission, particularly the person in charge of thoroughbred horse racing. She is absolutely adamant in her desire to reinvigorate thoroughbred horse racing here in Massachusetts, as would any government department, as they certainly want to always expand their own territory, which definitely puts us at a disadvantage in trying to prevent something that the state seems to want to have happen. Secondly, there is no question that Boston South is looking for every loophole they can possibly find. Loring Tripp stood before this board and said, no, we're not going to look for any zoning loophole. He used those words, 1 hour, 44 minutes exactly into the recording at PAC TV. And when I asked Mr. Gabbard to confirm that statement, his response was, well, we'll do whatever we're legally allowed to do, i.e., if we can find a loophole, we'll use it. So that's what they're trying to do. And the third thing is they are doing their darn best to completely circumvent this town. One of the things that is noted in the documents that we have seen is a question as to whether or not under 128.14 they can go to a county vote rather than follow the instructions of the town. So to Mr. Bletzer's point, to Mr. Quintel's point, yes, you do not have a proposal in front of you, but you know what it is they want to do, and you don't want to have to react to a proposal and try and stop something that's already coming down the track. You want to be proactive on this and cut it off first. You want the town's position to be the default position, not a responsive position. That is how we are going to lead in any fight to defeat something that our voters have said we don't want. I understand there are people who disagree, 12%, and they have that right, absolutely have that right. But the town has spoken, the members of the board have said they will follow the will of the people, and if that is their intention, I implore you to do what you legally can to make it absolutely clear that the state does not have your approval, and do not allow Boston South to twist your words in a fashion that will force you to later have to fight an uphill battle. Thank you very much.
Question. Hey, Mr. Barrington, Steve, I just got a question for you. Unless I read it wrong, it says that unless they get approval, if the selectmen have to vote, if the proposal comes before us, they will not give them a license unless we approve the proposal.
Under the current regulations, under 128A, 13A, they adopt the provisions of 277.33, which say exactly that the town has to have a vote by its executive, in our case, a select board, after a 7-day notice period, a public hearing, which must be advertised and placed in a conspicuous notice place. So I assume somewhere on Town Hall would be just fine.
Sure.
After which your position is the one that the state should be accepting.
Okay.
And they should not be allowed to go ahead and do that.
Okay.
However, again, we have different regulations that they are trying to circumvent that, which is why it is so critical. And I understand the original letter that Mr. Quintel wrote, and I've commented on it to a number of people. It was very clear. It says, we do not approve any specific use for this lot. It was clear. And yet somehow, Boston South has managed to submit that to the Gaming Commission, saying we have the approval of the Select Board and the County Commission. So the state isn't looking very clearly at what you've written.
Okay.
So I think you need to make it so clear
I
that
get it.
even...
I get it. So it was accurate when you responded to the letter, when there was some criticism out there. Well, it was not out here, but maybe out here too, but definitely on Facebook. And you clarified it when you said that the way we voted, the way we left horse racing out of that letter, that we were correct in not approving horse racing and gaming. Because you were clear, and I appreciate you explaining what that vote was about. You understood it.
Well, as an attorney, I understand the purpose of your language.
Okay.
At the same time, as an attorney, I can also tell you that I have litigated hundreds of cases over whether or not a word says what everybody says it says.
Steve, it's very simple. The proposal is not, they haven't got the proposal yet. They don't have a license application in front of us. If they did tonight, we would all vote no. You can be very comfortable, the citizens out there should be comfortable. In a couple of weeks, if we have to change the wording in what we sent, I'm sure we can accommodate that and do that.
And I have every confidence in you that you will do that.
Right.
I merely point out, as Mr. Helm has noted, there's a timeline that they have.
Right.
They're trying to beat you to the state. And so
They're not
I'm-
gonna, we're not gonna let them beat us, and there's a lot of other business that we have to move on to down the road. We can't just keep every meeting going over this.
I agree with you, and that's why I said.
I mean, I'm very
cut-
clear, and the
cut
rest
the
of the board is
serpent's head
clear.
off now.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's easier, it can be done, so.
Thank you, members.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bulletin. Just a conversation with the board. If a public hearing is what we need to do, then why, we have time now that we can post it, we have the 7 days, why don't we just consider it a public hearing so it dots all our i's and crosses our t's if we need it? So June 7th will be a public hearing. So. Could you please
Donna
state your name
Curtin.
for the record?
Donna Curtin, Precinct 3. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I just would like to observe that there is a difference between appearance and intent. And following Mr. Bulletin's very eloquent comments, I think there is the appearance, even though the intent of the board was not to give support to the very unmistakable efforts of Boston South and this group of interests to introduce horse racing to our town. The intent of the board may not have been to give support of that, but in some ways that is how it is being presented and used, and it is the appearance thereof. And therefore, I would urge you on whenever your next consideration of this matter is, to listen to the distress of the townspeople, that this appearance is not something that people are going to accept, that this appearance, I think many of us citizens feel, is dangerous to our community, and it's the appearance of this support that you need to address. And there is one clear way to do that, and that is to rescind the letter that you wrote. Not to draft a new letter, to rescind the letter that you wrote, and if your idea is to let the county develop their proposal for their land, allow them to do that, and allow them to come forward with a clear proposal before another letter of nominal support or whatever it might be is issued on this incredibly sensitive and important matter. So I would ask you to put on the agenda the discussion of rescinding the letter that was issued. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone on TV, Chris? And for next week, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to switch back to the Zoom profile so we can see who's on TV, because this is, sometimes people are writing and messaging, and I think the board probably would like that as well, to see who we have in our audience, not only here, but on TV. So the next is licenses and administrative notes. I will read some of the administrative notes, and then I will recuse myself from one of them, and Mr. Quintal will read that. So now I'm going to put on my new $1 tree glasses so I can actually see it. Mars Promotions, 10 Pimental Way. Michelle Pulver is requesting a one-day wine and malt license for 6/4/22 from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. at Memorial Hall for a Cage Titan event.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Mars Promotion, 10 Pimental Way, Michelle Pulver is requesting a one-day wine and malt license for 7/22 from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. at Memorial Hall for Cage Titans event.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Spectacle Management, 57 Bedford Street, Lexington. Jack Lally is requesting a one-day wine and malt license from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. at Memorial Hall for concerts on the following dates: 6/17, 6/18, 6/19, 7/27, 8/20, and 9/17/2022.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Mr. Chairman, vehicle for hire. Mr. Vice Chair.
Did you do Plentiful?
Oh, I'm sorry. Plentiful Catering and Events at Plymouth Pawtuxet Museums, 137 Warren Ave. Ryan Shanley is requesting a one-day wine and malt license for 6/18/22 from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Craft Beer Center at Plymouth Pawtuxet Museum for a dinner event.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Vehicle for hire, special occasion limousine, Christian Cavaco, 23 Diamond Street.
Move approval. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? 4 in favor, 1 abstention.
Thank you. Class 2 auto dealer, new license, A&G Auto Detail, Inc., 130 Camelot Drive, Plymouth. Alexander Rodriguez, President. Issuance of above licenses is subject to required paperwork and approval and recommendations from the zoning board.
Motion.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Temporary restaurant expansion, private property. Cabby Shack Incorporated, doing business as Cabby Shack, 30 Town Wharf, Clyde Brini. Manager is requesting temporary outdoor dining in the parking lot next to the restaurant. It's approximately 4,320 square feet with a seating area and a server station. The area is cordoned off. This is temporary and in compliance with the Governor's Act extending patio service until April 1st, 2023.
Motion.
Discussion? All those in favor? 4 in favor and 1 abstention. Eversource petition. Eversource Energy petition, work order 6402815 and 7615879. One petition covering the installation of PVC conduit, cable, and one handhole on Leiden Street. This work is necessary to provide underground electric service to number 1 and number 15 Main Street, Plymouth.
Move approval. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
We're not there yet.
We don't see anybody.
Back to 3A, yeah. It's on one list, Charlie, not the other.
3A on hold?
Yeah, we're going to hold that one for this
Yep.
evening.
That's what.
And Eversource Energy petition, work order 6932837. One petition covering the installation of PVC conduit, concrete encased, underground cable and conduit location. This work is necessary to provide underground electric service to a new home at 3 Greenside Way North.
Move approval.
All those in favor? Unanimous. We have administrative notes 1 through 12. It's up to the board unless anybody has any questions, if someone would move as a group.
Move them.
Yeah, Madam Chair, hold on a moment. All right, you're suggesting moving them all at once, huh?
Well, if you don't
All
want,
right.
if you don't want
All
to,
right,
John, we can do them separately.
Derek, there's a bunch of end-of-year transfers here.
Do you want to do those
I know there's some
separately?
meeting minutes, I'm going to have to abstain from meeting minutes, obviously, but the end-of-year transfers, Derek, if you will, is this a result of, is all this a result of like inflation over the course of the last 6 to 12 months getting out of control? Are you still recuperating financially coming out of the pandemic? Because this list here seems, I don't remember these amounts and this many in past years.
Yeah, through the chair, I mean, clearly, Mr. Mahoney, you can see that the majority of the year-end transfers are related to the rising fuel costs. The board had asked the departments to do an analysis of their fuel back in, I would say, early April, and the result is in front of you this evening. The other ones, the town clerk's year-end transfer request is related to mailing costs for voter registration. This was a higher number than anticipated and unusual, in fact, so we're still trying to get a better sense of why the mailing costs are so high this year versus previous years.
So just a quick scan, it's like about $350,000. Is this free cash or is this a?
These are year-end transfers. So we would be looking at other departmental line items that have a surplus, for lack of a better term, and then we would be transferring those surplus items to cover the deficits in these other line items.
Okay, and then obviously through the chair, and I don't know if she has an answer here, or the town manager, on number 11, being asked to authorize the application for an acceptance of grant funds in the amount of $2 million through the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs with respect to the Plymouth Long Beach Mixed Sediment Nourishment Project. So is this tied in to the $25 million that we heard about? I think 1 to 3 months ago, there was an announcement from the federal government for $25 million. Is this tied into that?
No, again, through the chair, it's not. These are two separate programs. So to answer your first question, there was $25 million that was awarded, thanks in large part by Senator Markey's office, his strong advocacy, and that is to repair the dike over at Long Beach. This $2 million is for nourishment. This is separate. This $2 million, just so we're clear, is not, we haven't received this money just yet. So what we do now, and they didn't do previously, is we require all applications before they're submitted to go in front of the board for approval. So that's what's before you this evening. This is just so that we can get the approval by the board to submit an application for $2 million.
Was there a presentation made to the board on the $25 million?
Just an announcement.
Just an announcement. So is that something through the chair? Maybe at a future meeting, we can have an agenda item and have Mr. Gould come in, and maybe he can delineate exactly, if he secures the $2 million, what is that going to do for Long Beach? And, I mean, I get it, it's federal money, but I still don't want to put $25 million out there if it's just shoveling sand literally against the tide. And I know it's for the revetment or the, the piece of infrastructure on the Atlantic side that goes out there, but I think it's worthy of a public presentation up on the board, so you know exactly what's going on and where that is falling in on the beach and what, in a perfect world, David is going to do with this $2 million. So I don't know if he can speak on behalf Is he allowed to speak on behalf of the Army Corps of Engineers? Or maybe he could have somebody come in that night? and-
Well, as we all know, David was heavily involved working with the Army Corps for many years to see that grant award through its end and ultimately getting
I just-
fruition.
I don't want to see 25 million put out there if it's going to be gone in 5 years. So I'd like to know exactly what.
Sure, yeah, no, David certainly can come in and talk about the program. Yeah, he's most in tune to it.
We'll just put that on a future agenda.
Sure.
And actually, Everett Malaguti, who's the chairman of the Coastal,
Everett Malaguti, Chairman, Natural Resources and Coastal Beaches Committee. So the 2 million ask, as was pointed out by Derek, is correct, that it's just for the authority for them to go and seek the grants and the board to sign off on that. This is similar to a project that the department did a number of years ago for stabilization of the washover areas on Long Beach. I think it was in 2015-16 when that project happened. And it's a cobble nourishment, so it's not just dumping sand onto the beach. It's using sand, pebbles, and rocks to actually create more of a natural barrier to eliminate, well, not technically eliminate, but to slow down the erosion of the area and to stabilize dunes that have been lost due to the significant storms, and especially due to the Army Corps dike that has been eroding due to lack of maintenance on their part for numerous years. Due to, along with the $25 million that was just stated by Mr. Mahoney, I as well asked those similar questions during a couple of our natural resource meetings about what the actual final plan is. If Plymouth has a say in some of it, we won't have a say in all of it because it's a federal project, but to at least keep us abreast of the situation so that we can move forward accordingly with new projects that would come out that could be in tandem with that or other avenues that come with that. Thank you.
thank you, Everett. Did we have a second?
Yeah, I'll just have to abstain from number 1 and number 2.
Okay.
I'll second.
Discussion?
All but 1 and 2.
All but 1 and 2. So vote unanimous, except for
I'll abstain from 1 and 2.
Okay. Abstention of 1 and 2. Okay, committee liaison designee updates. And John and Charlie will be going through those new committee appointments on June 7th. If you could get that together. Go ahead.
Yeah, Betty, I'll submit my resignation this week to the handicap. I announced to that board last night that I would resign. That would be the last meeting that I chaired last night. They're going to put the first agenda item for the July meeting will be, reorganization of that committee. I was holding the slot, which was formerly held for a member of the former Plymouth Nuclear Matters Committee. So I'll resign that, and then obviously when we go over this list, if somebody wants me to go back as this board's designee, I'll do that.
Okay.
So maybe.
What, you gonna fight me for it?
No. I meant maybe you just stay there.
Yeah, but we're just following the process.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Something? No?
Good.
Old business?
Yeah, I have some old business. I don't know if it's old business or new business. They become new business.
It's
but,
business.
One of my constituents on Facebook a couple times brought up.
Can you talk a little louder?
Yeah, you need the
Yeah,
mic,
let
pull
me
the
put it
microphone.
on. Yep. One of my constituents, by way of Facebook, which I don't really look at that much, Donna Reddy, brought up Cherry's Bait Shop. She's brought it up a couple times. So I was wondering the status on the lease. I know that just for history, because I want to clarify it tonight, is that I believe we wanted to get that building up to code, and that's why we terminated the lease. We were going to put it out to bid. We had no intention of ever putting another bait, we wanted a bait and tackle, no restaurant, no bars. It was always the intent. So then we reconsidered, and we made a lease. I believe, Dickie, you might be able to, you were involved in it. And they were supposed to bring up the building up to code. And it was, I forget what the date was, but I know we gave them an extension till June, which is next week. And I was by there yesterday, and I still see that it doesn't look like the outside has been completed. So Derek, I was wondering if we can talk to Tiffany and find out, because I get obviously some constituents concerned about that building, and I'd like to know what's going to go on. Can we put that on the agenda? It's got to be for June, because they're supposed to be up to code by June. We can? Okay, yep.
Yeah, we certainly can provide an update to the board as to what's going on with that.
I want to thank Donna Eddie for bringing that up. I appreciate that, Donna. Thank you.
Anyone else? Old business, letters, new business? Go ahead, John. Boy, did I miss these days.
Really?
So my first stint on the board, Mr. Quinto was there, and it's just a comment on how quickly the society and culture changes. And I can remember sitting a decade ago down at Lincoln Street, and you would look out at the press table, and there'd be somebody there from the Old Colony Memorial. If you were in theory discussing a potential racino or racetrack, somebody would be there from the Quincy Ledger, the Brockton Enterprise, and if, in a big issue like that, somebody would come out of the Globe or the Herald. You'd have WATD there, and you could have, on the big issues, 4 to 6 people out at the press table. The last decade, it has changed quickly. Everything, all the content is online. What we read for news, what we see for advertisement, and obviously, picking up where Charlie left off on Facebook or social media, but we'll go right to Facebook. So I know that at one of the forums, I think a month ago, Charlie had mentioned that the community had either hired or will hire a communications director or officer or something like that. And Derek, obviously I'll set up some time with you to sit down and get up on some of these issues, but it is Facebook is a breeding ground for misinformation, confrontation, and it's not easy. In a perfect, we got to stay above the fray, because this executive board, we're the face of the community, and we've got to stay above the fray as much as we can. So it's a place you go in, and I don't know what the role of this person is going to be, but you should go in. Hi, I'm Jane Doe or John Smith. I'm here to present you with this. There's a meeting happening, the decision has been made, or some form of factual data is happening, and you get out. Or if you step into, you get in to correct a piece of misinformation and get out. And I just don't want to see, I'm looking forward to sitting with you and seeing what this job description is and how this is going to be handled as we go forward. And then obviously that will come to the board at a future meeting and we'll have a discussion on that, or has that already been determined?
On the position itself?
The position and roles, and what the expectation is, the relationship between this individual and the executive board.
We certainly can clarify those lines of communication. This position is a hybrid that I've talked about previous. So as we all know, Chris, who's sitting to my left, is going to take the position that's been vacated since Tiffany became the grant writer. And so it was my hope and my intention, still my intention, that the position that Chris is currently sitting in will have a heavy focus on communication. So to your point, I think we can do a better job of getting the facts out, right? And so when information's out there, folks can use our platform to fact check what's going on in the community, right? So this position will have an eye towards social media. We'll have an eye towards working with PAC TV and Ed TV to do some spots of what's going on in the community. So there's a lot of great things that are happening. And, you know, it's my hope that we can try to publicize that or socialize that to the community. So press releases, I think we got to do a better job issuing press releases when good stories are out there and need to be told. So, and then just working with the media. You mentioned WATD, but the Old Colony Memorial, and just try to get good information out there so folks know what's going on day in and day out. And you know, honestly, like, our departments and our staff do great work, you know, and I think we need to highlight that and let folks, let them know where their money is being spent and how it's being spent, and the great work that's happening each week. So that's the intention of the position. And, you know, we can certainly clarify that position's role directly with the select board and what that means to them.
Anyone else for new business? Mr. Quintal?
Derek, you got any dates, have you given any thoughts to the dates for Sandwich Road? For town meeting members,
Oh, to do a walkthrough?
yeah.
I'm just looking at the
I mean,
calendar.
you
Yeah,
don't
you know,
have
I
to give
can,
it tonight, but-
I think what, yeah, so, the finance, A&F is gonna meet tomorrow. Let me connect with, Mr. Vale, see when he's available. He has stated to me in the past that he's able to, open the building and, you know, tour the building for the public. So let me connect with him tomorrow, and then maybe I can make more of a public formal announcement tomorrow night in front of, Advisory and
That's
Finance.
fine. Okay. Thank you, that's all.
Any-
Madam Chair.
Anyone else for new business? Because you know I'm going to have some.
Oh, I miss those days too.
So, I mean, as now the new chairman, the chairman are the ones that set the agenda, and I'd like to do some different things with the agenda. So we will have a public comment that is going to be the first order of business on the agenda, probably another one at the end of the meeting as well. I'd like to have a selectmen's, whether we call it something selectmen's corner or selectmen discussion, whatever it was. But I'd like for this board to be able to have discussions about any issues that have come up and that they just want to get some information out there. Not necessarily that we're going to be voting on something or doing anything like that. But I think it's important, especially where we don't normally comment under public comment. But I think, you know, it's important that the residents know, like, what we're thinking and some of the things that we've, you know, we've addressed and things like that. So I am going to be working with the town manager. We are going to set up a new agenda. And hopefully you guys will love it. And if not, I'm sure we'll hear about it. So, and another thing too, John and Charlie and Harry, it's time for goals. John, I can send you the goals that the select board has. And if you could put down what your goals are moving forward, because we also need to set up some kind of workshop that we can all get together and discuss. I know you did goal setting today with your department heads, so I believe that's a good exercise for the board to do as well. So I think that's all I have. Anyone else?
Motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Everybody have a great, safe holiday weekend, and we will see you on June 7th. Thank you.